Assalamu alaikum, khosh amadeen. Today, again, is a new lesson with me, Esma Pupel, on Universal Finance Academy. Again, let me share my contact information if you ever need my help or just would like to comment and let me know how things are going financially for you. So again, my email is universalfinanceacademy@gmail.com. And my Facebook page is Universal Finance Academy. I also have an Instagram now, which I'll share next time, but it's under the same name, Universal Finance Academy, if you'd like to add me on Instagram as well. So today we have a really special guest, my career coach, Marcella Kirschbaum. She will be going through the process of what it takes to be a career coach, what the process is for students and how they benefit from going to the career services at the university. So I'll kind of hand it over to Marcella so she can introduce herself a little bit.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Marcella. I work for the David Eccles School of Business, where I am a career coach with Business Career Services, and that is how I met Esma, actually. She's one of my students. I work specifically with management and entrepreneurship and business administration majors, but I can coach anyone in any major. The principles are the same. I've worked for the Eccles School of Business now for about 3.5 years. Before that, I had a very different career. I have a degree in international studies. I have a minor in Arabic and a minor in peace and conflict studies. I feel that my specialty is building relationships with people, which is why I chose to go into career where I get to meet with people and talk to them and help them create better futures for themselves.
Awesome. And then I know you said you spoke a couple different languages, right?
I do. I speak a little bit of Arabic. I studied Arabic for 3 years. I also speak German. Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren, in Deutschland. Ein herzliches Willkommen zu unseren lieben Zuschauer in Deutschland. Meine Mutter kommt aus Berlin. My mother's from Germany, and I've traveled there many, many times in the past. So I speak German about 75–80% fluent. Yes, and I speak a little bit of Spanish, and I speak a little bit of French. I love traveling, so I always try to pick up a little bit of the languages I'm learning wherever I'm going.
Yeah, that's amazing. I wish I was that talented. So we'll go ahead and get started. And I know that your main focus is, students, how to benefit them overall. What are your main, goals as a career coach?
My main goal as a career coach, number one, is to get students to come meet with me early on in their academic career. So we now have a class at the Eccles School of Business where every freshman takes a class called a careers class. And that gives a great overview of career exploration and beginning with resumes. But our ultimate goal as a career coach is to make sure that our students have jobs, it's called placement, are placed by the time that they graduate or at least within 6 months of graduation. An example of that would be that you are graduating this semester and you and I are working together and we're applying for jobs. We have people on our team that know some of the employers that where Esma's applied, and so whenever Esma applies, I advocate for her with our employers to say, please see her resume, she's a fantastic, stellar candidate, and she would be an asset to your business. So ultimately our goal is to work with you from the very beginning with exploration to get engagement on a regular basis, at least once per semester during your first 2 or 3 years, and then more often really until you're placed when you graduate. And we help with everything, again, from exploration, resume building, networking, interviewing, and salary negotiation.
Yeah, so a lot of great services. I know a lot of people who are either watching, either have children who are about to go into college or thinking about going into college themselves. I started, my freshman year with my advisors, but didn't realize the great opportunity I had with the career services or the career coach that I had at the university, and I didn't get to experience that until my senior year. So for, freshmen who aren't sure about, resume building, about how to start, looking for internships, etc., which we'll talk about later, make sure to at least set up an appointment like once a year, once a semester, meet with your career coach and kind of see how you can, gain knowledge and work towards, setting goals for your future career path.
Yeah, and let me piggyback on that for a second, Esma, in that every university or college in the United States, and I would assume around the world, I know we have listeners from around the world today, every university and college has the same goal. They want to make sure that their education provided value and allow that student to get hired post-graduation. So every university has a career services office. We're lucky here at the Ethel School of Business where we have our own career services office, but there's also a central location. So wherever you are, if you are in a community college, if you are in a state college, a private college, whatever, if you haven't already met with your career advisor, your career coach, seek out that department. The earlier you do it, the better, the more beneficial it is.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I know there is, we just started talking about it, ways that, the Career and Professional Development Centers can help students. What beyond just your advice and initial help can you offer to students when they go to, have an appointment with you?
Well, I think it all starts with getting to know you as a person. I can't help you look for a job, and number one, so I know not only your work history, but really like who are you? What are your strengths? We do something called Strengths Finder, where you get to know what your inherent talents are. We try to figure out from you, and by open-ended questioning, what are the values you bring to an employer? Where do you feel you excel? What are your strengths, and how can we put that on a resume? And so that's why it's important to begin that relationship early, so that the more I know you and where you excel, the better I can help you look for that job and apply for the right job. And so, every job search, everything out there begins with the resume as a foundation. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment, but there's so much detail. And so we take the time to work with you step by step so you refine that resume, because you don't want just a good resume, you want an excellent resume. And here at a business school, if you're at a private college, if you have children who are in a private college, you're paying a lot for tuition. And so I know you're paying a lot for tuition, or somebody is, your scholarship donor or someone else. Yeah, so I don't want you having just a good resume. I want you having an excellent resume. And the more I know you, the more I can help showcase your talents in the written form on your resume. So, I would say that relationship building is what you get in addition to, that's the personal piece you get with all of the other pieces, the professional pieces we provide.
Yeah, exactly. Just as you're saying, resume building obviously is the number one thing that career coaches focus on. Later on, helping with internships, which we'll talk about later. I was really lucky to get some amazing ones. Helping with networking, building up your LinkedIn, potentially getting to meet professionals within either your educational realm as well as in your professional realm where you could shadow, for instance. And I know that, for example, here at the University of Utah, we do a lot of job fairs, we do a lot of interview preparations. So those are all resources that usually your career development centers provide, and that, again, that personal, connection you can create with your career coach is a great resource to hopefully build, your resume and your skill set, and just to find yourself before you have to actually go out into that, scary field of job hunting and etc.
Yeah, and informational interviews, as we touched on that's so important, whether you're in an internship or you've just gone to the job fair. We really help you. I have questions I can provide to you for this is what you want to ask in information interview. Everyone knows right now that because of COVID, the labor market around the world, the global economy has changed. The labor market is very different. It's very tight. There's a lot of applicants for every job. And so networking is so important. So we really work with you on how to network, which is just it's just another word of saying relationship building. So, something else you get personal from us is guided questions for to ask for information interview and how to reach out to people, how to connect on them. There's so much to it.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll just go straight into, what it takes to, build a resume basically. And Marcella has helped me shape mine so that it is very direct, shows my personality, and gives, very specific reasons as to why I was very successful at my previous jobs and why I would be a good candidate for the job that I would be applying or I'm currently applying for. So I know, why is a resume so important? What should we include in a resume? And how do we make ourselves stand out?
Oh, excellent question. So a resume is important because the purpose of a resume is for you to land an interview. Mm-hmm. So also most resumes these days, if you're applying for jobs, you're in college, we use a platform called Handshake, there's Indeed, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, there's so many ways to do it. But Most of the time when you're applying for a position, it is not seen by a human for the first screening. It's going through something called ATS software, applicant tracking software. And so that applicant tracking software is scanning for keywords. So you want to make sure, and this is why it's very important to tailor your resume to every position. Because if you want to make sure that the language on your resume replicates the language in the job posting. So that's number one, is really the ultimate purpose of your resume is to land an interview. And everything else is a step beyond there. A resume is not a listing of your tasks and responsibilities. That's what a job posting is. A resume is a listing of your accomplishments and your achievements. And there's a pattern and a technique to writing that. And also a lot of people, especially the first time, sometimes women come to me, women have, tend to be very creative sometimes. And so they come to me with a really creative resume, a lot of graphics and color. And it looks beautiful, but it doesn't work. It doesn't get through applicant tracking software. Applicant tracking software, ATS, doesn't recognize graphics, and it usually doesn't recognize color. So I always hate breaking it down to students. You're going to have to go with the boring looking resume, but that is what is effective. So there's a process. If you're graduating from college, you obviously always start with your education, your honors, your scholarships. Then from there you go on to and I think you have a couple of examples. You go on to experience, and then service leadership, volunteer work, and then we add a little section for activities and interest as well that brings some personality to it. There's a very specific way of writing a resume. You don't write in first person, and you eliminate a lot of words like a and the, and that's why you work with a career coach, so we can strip out that word, because you want to be able to communicate your accomplishments with brevity and succinct. And highlight and showcase the accomplishments that you've made. So, I mean, that's a lot of explanation for the purpose of a resume and what a resume does. There's obviously, it's not just a one-time pass-through. I workshop and work with students for a long time, but the purpose of your resume is to showcase yourself at your best, the value you bring to your company, what you've accomplished, and to land it here. Right. I don't know, did I say too much, Esma? What would you say about that?
I think that's perfect, in all honesty. When I first, had my meeting with Marcella, I wasn't sure about what experience or what knowledge I would receive from her, but she started at the basics. She asked me, what are my goals for the future? What am I currently doing to, complete my education? And then we took a look at my resume and we tried to make sure that what I was saying to her was also being represented on my resume itself. So for a lot of, high schoolers who are, trying to apply for scholarships, for a lot of, freshmen or sophomores in university who are trying to apply for internships, and for those of us who are hopefully graduating and hopefully will find a job in this current market, inshallah, we all need to just refocus on what exactly, like how she was saying, keep it brave, keep it very, succinct. Make sure that you are pinpointing your strengths. Make sure you're showing why you are someone who should get that position or get that internship or get into that university instead of someone else. If you're, if that employer, that university doesn't see your potential or what makes you special, then they're just going to overlook you. They look, over, hundreds of thousands of resumes every year. So I'll actually go ahead and kind of share the resume that we're going to start with the accomplished statements first. I forgot.
Yeah, and if you want to, do you want to share it first and come back?
No, I think this is great because this makes more sense.
So for some of you, the term accomplishment statements might be new. And so again, this is really what separates, a lesser resume from a very good resume. Again, sometimes people, especially, college students who are looking for maybe their first job or their first internship, you just don't know. You tend to write down what you did in your job. What were the tasks and responsibilities that you did? And that is really just a list. It's just a list, actually. And that's what job posting is. So what an accomplishment statement does is it takes what you've done and it answers the question, why did you do it? And it highlights how effective you are at your work. So you can see here from this slide, an accomplishment statement answers the question, what did you do and why did you do it? And it's important to write every single bullet point under your relevant experience, your professional experience in this format. I can't stress this enough. There's no exceptions. And you always do it by starting with an action verb, story details, and then what was the impact or benefit of what you have done. Now, that impact or benefit might not be positive, but everything you've done has an impact. Even, if you've been a server at a restaurant the whole time you've been in college, you've been an excellent server to provide excellent customer service to gain repeat customers at the restaurant. So just think about, sometimes I used to work with high school students, and some of them were working as the janitors in their school. They would say, well, how do I frame this as an accomplishment? I said, you're not a janitor, you're not just sweeping. You're doing this for the health and safety of everyone who enters the building. Yeah. So start thinking almost reverse. Why did you do what you did? And a good career coach will ask you, I think even you and I talked about this when you first came in, you'd written some statements, and I said, okay, tell me about this, tell me why you did this. And the important thing, the details, action verb details, impact, those details, that's where you provide the scope of your work. How many, how much, what percentage, that sort of thing. So that's what's so important is you want to provide weight also. So, let's say if you're working in a restaurant, I served many patrons per night. How many tables did you turn per night? How fast was it? So anything that you can create quantity or you can quantify is really important to get in that accomplishment statement. And it takes some practice, but once you get into that pattern, if you literally workshop your statements line by line, you will start developing that pattern and seeing things that way.
Yeah, and for a lot of people who don't know what quantifying means, it's basically giving a specific number or a statistic that allows an employer to see what you've accomplished beyond just a general statement. It gives more of a, what would you say?
It gives more weight and impact. Yeah. And so, if you're working in a call center, you have metrics, I think they're called. You have metrics of how many calls you need to get through in one shift. You have a metric that ideally they want you to not be on the phone more than, say, 4 minutes. And in addition to that, a good career coach will start talking to you about the transferable skills that come with any position. So again, if you're working in a call center as a student, if you're working in a restaurant as a student, how did you solve conflict? Right. How did you do the work that you're doing? How did you de-escalate a situation? How did you provide excellent customer service? And so there's a whole list of transferable skills that you can Google, you can find, but that's the key to resume writing.
Yeah. We'll move on from there. I know you talked about, action words, beyond just having quantitative, numbers or specific statistics, why would you want action words versus writing passively or just writing about yourself in a general tone?
Yeah, great question. So if you ever when you do look at job postings, every job posting really, they all begin with an action verb. You need to manage people, plan the calendar, manage your time, bring in. So every job posting starts with an action verb. And so here's a statistic I actually mentioned earlier. A hiring manager or a recruiter will spend an average of 6 seconds scanning through resumes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's it. That is how long they're looking at your resume. So the purpose of having that format is they're going to look at the beginning of every sentence and say, oh, well, I need planning, I need de-escalation, I need these things, and they're going to find it easily on your resume. So another thing is, I'm glad you provided this big list because there are so many fabulous action verbs to choose from, and we often get stuck using the same ones: managed, promoted, improved. Yeah. But again, if you want to exemplify value, think about using words like initiated, motivated, persuaded, influenced, these strong verbs. So I always tell students to use a thesaurus in a dictionary when you're writing a resume, and we have a list like this. Always use a list like this, the resume action verbs, because you're going to find so many things you never even thought about. Right. Educated, empowered, enriched, advised. There's great words out there and verbs. So use a list, use a thesaurus as part of a dictionary.
So this is just like an example that I kind of was, when I was browsing online, I found. So, you know, for example, me, I haven't trained anyone, but if I were to be someone who trained someone, I would say, you know, I train new employees. But like, what does that mean really? You know, just because you've trained someone, how did you, you know, accomplish the goals? Did you provide, you know, did you just provide bare minimum skills for that employee? Did you go beyond and above? How many employees did you help throughout a certain time span? How many of those actually employees are new hires were retained and stayed with the company because of how well you trained them? So beyond that, you could say, you know, train new employees resulting in increased customer satisfaction. You know, you train the employees in a way that they were able to provide the products and services to clients or customers, and that resulted in, you know, higher sales goals being accomplished, more customer satisfaction, so they stayed loyal. And that's just because you stood at the very beginning of the front line and you made sure you trained them properly. But if you just say train new employees and you're trying to get a better position somewhere else or get promoted, no one's going to understand what you're saying.
Well, they're not going to understand how well you did your job.
Yeah.
So what you've done here with your example is, what did you do, and why did you do it? What you did was train new employees. Why did you do it? Was for customer satisfaction. Now, if you know that you increase customer satisfaction by 15%, as demonstrated by customer follow-up surveys, that's even better. Anything that's sales related that you can put on your resume with those quantitative metrics. What did you improve? What did you increase? What did you reduce? Really important to get that on your resume.
Yeah, so, and then as we were saying, like quantitative, you know, adding some kind of number or stat. So then you could say trained more than 15 new employees over a 12-month period, resulting in an increased customer satisfaction. So making it, you know, brief, specific, you know, starting with an action verb, you know, trained, not using like I trained, don't make it first person, are all just great ways to create a value statement within your resume.
Yeah, avoid that. Yeah, first person and personal pronouns. So don't use I, your, their, and that's, it seems funny to write like that when you're first starting. You want to slash any sort of personal pronoun.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to also qualify by saying that I am only speaking from my experience writing resumes in the United States. So I know that we have viewers from around the world, and some of those rules will be different for you. And I know in Europe, it's very different with what's on a resume. So make sure, again, that you're connecting with a career coach in the country in which you're applying for work and living, so that you do it right. So this is best based on my personal experience in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Hopefully in the future when we have, guests from around the globe, I'm going to have someone from Germany soon, someone from Australia. We can kind of go more in depth on how they do things in the future. So right now we will go ahead and look at my resumes, and then we'll compare what I had from like early 2019 to current for 2020. So I'll kind of open that.
You had a good resume to begin with, actually. We just, I would say, tightened it up. Went from good to great, I'd say.
Yeah, and all thanks to Marcel. I don't know what I would have done without her.
I had a really good person to work with.
Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen in just a moment.
And well, as we start out, let me just say that your resume is a dynamic document, and it's always a kind of a living document, and that it will always be changing with every role you have. It will be changing, but again, as you apply for different positions, you're always wanting to tailor that with the keywords that are in that job posting. So keep that in mind as well. And if you've been working for 10 years or less, you really want to keep your resume to one page, ideally, depending on your industry. But really, you should be able to write it briefly and succinctly if you've been working for 10 years or less of work history.
Okay, there we go. So here on, I guess, our left, I guess for you guys is right, we have my old resume here, So we'll kind of scroll through it. At the beginning, you should have your full legal name. I was a Daniel Scholar, which helped me pay for 4 years of my college. So if you ever have the opportunity, if you live in, Colorado, Montana, Utah, or New Mexico, I would definitely try and get that scholarship. And then, you include your contact information and your location, so employers know if you're nearby or if you're, far away. And then we got rid of this, but I initially had an objective because when I was just Googling examples, a lot of them had objectives. And just because, on Google it shows you something that seems proper doesn't necessarily mean it's the proper thing, from what I learned from Marcella. Usually you have your education first, and that's going to be most recent to your very beginning school, like your high school. So I have my university, and then I have where I went to West High School, and I had my accomplishments that when I got my degree, when I graduated from there. After that, you have like your work experience. So I have, all of you have your title, you have the location or the company that you worked for, you have the year, if you're currently working there or if you previously worked there, the location. And then as you can see, my statements are very short and not very, they don't have a quantitative aspect to them. They don't really start with like an action verb, and they don't really show what I did beyond just my regular responsibilities and duties, like what Marcella was saying. You need to show them, something special about you, and I wasn't showing that. So you can kind of like move past that. And then I didn't really realize that I should have, because I'm doing 2 majors, I'm doing, biology and I'm doing the business. I didn't realize that I should have separated them. And Marcella made me realize, like, depending on the position you're applying to, you should have only relevant information that would be useful for the employer when looking at your resume. They don't want to see everything you've done. They want to see the exact roles that you have gained skills and knowledge that would make you the perfect candidate for that specific job position.
Relevant is the key word. Yeah. Meaning related to where you apply.
Yeah, exactly. And then I had skills, but I think we talked about a little bit more. I think I took that off as well. If you have very like specific technical skills, like coding programs, I've seen a lot of people who have that, they'll put it on. Or if they, what other technical, like languages, if someone knows like a...
Yeah, so specific hard skills, like if you know, especially coding language, anything related to information systems is really important. If you speak a second language, you want to get that on there. So, and again, this is where working with a career coach, if you're in college, comes in really important, because everyone, you are lucky, I'm lucky to work with you, you have a lot of experience on your resume. Now, I get some students who come in and have very, very little experience on your resume, and so then we need to fill it up.
Right.
And so I'll add skills, or more transferable skills, like problem solving and relationship building, things like that, when students don't have as much to put on their resume. Hard skills, anything that's technical related, you definitely want to get there, at the top of your resume between education and experience. And as you can see from your previous resume, you had your references. You never want to leave your references. That's always a separate document. And then the objective statement is really no longer, that's not necessary anymore. If you need to fill space on a resume, I would talk to students about having a summary statement. If you're pivoting your career or you have really no relevant experience, that's when you put a summary statement, and I'll send some links to creating a summary statement at the end of this. The one other thing I want to say that's really important, Esma, is that you no longer need to put your physical address at the top of your resume. And there's 2 reasons for that. Number one is that no employer will ever contact you at your home, your physical address. And number 2, because you are applying through the applicant tracking software, you want to have some anonymity. There's a lot of people out there and a lot of places that these resumes go through. Not everyone needs to know where you live, or should know. So you no longer need your address at the top.
Right, so would you still have like at least like the city and state you're in, or would you just have nothing?
No, you have your phone number, your email address, and your LinkedIn address, and that's it. No. And then most employers will always look you up on LinkedIn if they're interested in you, and that usually gives you a physical location, a greater Salt Lake City, but never a physical address. There's just
too many people out there.
Yeah, too many people out there. Leave your physical address off.
Yeah. So now we'll kind of take a look at my current resume. So we can kind of showcase that. So as you can see, I've cleared up the top a little bit. I just have my name. I still keep the Daniel Scholars because I really appreciate them, and I want to show my employees that I was able to receive that scholarship for right now.
And it's an incredible scholarship that is highly selective, so you should be showcasing that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, like Marcella said, I took off my location. I just have my cell phone number they can contact me at, my email, as well as my LinkedIn. So if you have all those three, just keep that. You're doing well. Now I took off that objective statement, like Marcella was saying. It's not really necessary because you're trying to get a specific position, but your objective might not be 100%. What they're looking for. It might be something you're looking for long term. So just keep that out completely. And then we can see with my most current experience, since I'm kind of more focused on like my business, potential and the career path there. And, in the future, I want to look into biology, especially like in research or working for, medical supply teams, etc., but more on the business aspect. I might incorporate some of my biology, like research classes, etc. But for now, trying to hone in my finance skills, looking for positions in that specific area. I only have business-related positions, and we can kind of go through it. Like Marcella, thankfully, always looks at my resume every time I add a new job, and she's very patient. She's really wonderful. So really get to know your career coach, because when you do, you create a connection that goes beyond just someone helping you out because they're paid to do it. They're really there to help you.
One of the benefits of this relationship of a career coach and student and knowing each other is I know what your skills are. I know that you're looking for work in finance. And so when a job comes through, I'm always getting emails from LinkedIn or from Handshake. And when a job comes through that I think you're qualified for, I can just email it to you. We did that tonight, in fact.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when on LinkedIn also, when you and your career coach are both on LinkedIn, if jobs come through there that I think, I know I have a student who's really good at this, I can really quickly send it to you. And so that's why the relationship building key, that's what you get from career coaching.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll go ahead and kind of share the value statements that I was able to complete. Make sure I share that correctly.
And I also want to let our viewers know that, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, oh my word, my resume doesn't look anything like this, that's great. That's what keeps me in business. And this is what I tell my students, because students will meet me for the first time, and most students don't have a resume like this. And so I'm really direct, and I say, okay, this is what we need to change. And I ask them, and sometimes students feel like, oh, I'm so sorry, my resume wasn't good. I'm like, no. Your resume is exactly where it should be at this point in your career. That's why you have a career coach. That's why I have a job, because I like doing this and I'm good at it. We all stay in our lane. So don't ever get down on yourself if it's not what if you're getting that constructive feedback on your resume. It's designed to help make you better.
Exactly. So we can take, my current job at Hearsay Systems. Again, I have the company name, the location it's at. I started, in June, and I'm currently working there. I have my position as a customer advocate. And then I go on, and usually I think you said around 2 to 3 bullet points is enough.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to list every single thing you do. You're highlighting what you're most proud of. This, the value where you think those bullet points bring the most value to your next employer. It's always your resume is always geared towards your next step. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think for example, that very first one where it says contact 500,000 agents on behalf of clients to guide through the process of utilizing dynamic campaigns for social media accounts, and to also stay in the company's compliance policies. Originally, I think I just had it as contact a list of company contacts to help with social media accounts, and that was it. But obviously, this one is very specific. It shows how many agents I usually help on like a weekly basis, and then what exactly I did to provide services with enhancing their social media presence by using those dynamic campaigns, and then making sure that I pointed out that specifically I'm doing this to make sure that these agents or these employees are staying within their company's compliance.
Yeah. And then you can see down below you have your volunteer and other, and I feel like I should have told you to change that. So I like the term service leadership, but the hard TV, like that's an activity. And so that, in fact, you could even, so here's another thing that's key for a resume. Everything that goes under experience doesn't have to all be paid. So this is a great experience, and I would use a strong action verb like spearheaded informational finance academy. It's those strong action verbs that demonstrate your initiative and your motivation. So that can even go, if you wanted to, you have the option with anything that's volunteer. It's all about skill building. So even if you did a lot of volunteer work, you can put that under your actual relevant experience if you don't have anything else to choose from. So, and there's a lot of ways to frame that volunteer. You can, again, service leadership, volunteer, community engagement. Be creative with that title.
Yeah, exactly. And as I shared again, you can see, I got rid of my references at the bottom. Instead, I keep them as a separate Google document, and I update them regularly. I usually have about, 3 to 6, both, from my educational sphere, as well as my, my managers or coworkers that I really got to, have a very, connected relationship with, and they really saw how well I did in my positions. So I kept those contacts, and I always update them, make sure I have their current, email, phone number, location if needed. So that way you can always, you have someone ahead of time. You don't need to rush finding people's locations and phone numbers. So just make sure to have, a separate like Google Doc or whatever you use to keep those references.
And you only submit your references upon request. So you don't need to write on your resume available upon request. Every employer knows that. But you'll never voluntarily submit them until you've been asked.
And then I guess in a way, like we got rid of the objectives at the beginning, but we did add an interest section at the very end. Why? I understand why it's very important, but why do you think people should, add their interest on a resume?
Yeah, it's funny because before actually I worked in this position, I was someone who didn't add my interest on the resume. But I think when you are at this stage in your career, when you're coming out of college and looking for that first job, it can be hard to set yourself apart. And so an interest brings that personality to your resume. And it says a little bit more about you. That's something that's just unique. It also creates a conversation or creates common ground. And so the point of creating conversation is that when you walk into or zoom into your interview and someone's seen that, it's so interesting. They can ask a question to you and start a conversation. Your interview is going to go that much better. Because I feel like in an interview, you want it to be more of a conversation than this very structured environment. And that can be really hard over Zoom. We're doing all interviews over Zoom these days.
Yeah.
So it's just also like you want it to be something unique. A lot of students will put, I like traveling. And so I try to say, well, bring what more? Where do you like traveling? Where did you last travel? What did you like about this country? You have such a unique interest that I've never had any other student tell me what your goals are. And I think that's really relevant, that people know that you have that kind of ambition and you see global opportunity. And so that's what I really like your interest on there. But it can be anything from, I've had students tell me that, who don't have a lot of interest actually, well, I like to read. So I'll say, okay, what's the last book you read? We just try to bring something personal and personality to that. To spark a conversation with some common ground.
Yeah, I really appreciate the advice Michelle gave me and the fact that she noticed that I had something different from other students, because I always thought I have the exact same things everyone else has. I'm not thinking uniquely, but in reality, when I heard her say that, I was like, wow, like I do have something, and I do show passion and drive that goes beyond just my general interest. So if you can find something like that, I definitely add that onto your resume. That actually reminded me, because you recently talked about, Zoom. Right now I'm trying to find, full-time positions after I graduate. And I've noticed a lot of the interviews are just, pre-auto-generated questions and me answering the question and then someone reviewing it. I don't actually get that, in person, face to face, you know, where we can connect and kind of go beyond just my resume. We can go and, you know, personalize and, you know, you see my personality beyond just some generic answer that I give.
That's so hard. I don't envy you. It's a hard platform. I think your generation is a little more comfortable with being on screen and even reporting things on your own without someone on the other end. But having said that, you gotta bring it. You know, every time you're doing that, the platform often is called HireView. Every time you're doing that video one-sided interview, you smile, you act like it's the first time, and every answer you remind the employer of the value you are bringing to that position. And so when you're answering those questions, and again, this is where the mock interview comes in really handy and really important, you know, even for a HireView, is there's a way to frame your answers where you're bringing value. You're always reminding them of what you're going to do for them. You know, and they're pretty short, those videos. Good lighting is important. Here at the Echo School of Business, we have career studios you can book. Even now during COVID, you can still book a career studio with excellent lighting, great microphones. So make sure you have really good lighting. Make sure that your eye level with your screen, because so many people will put their laptop as lower and they're looking down where you can literally look up their nose. So just little things like that make such a difference, but always be smiling and have some answers. Now, here's the great thing about those videos is that you get to cheat. I have a piece of paper here you can't see. Yeah. You can have your piece of paper that reminds you of what are the things you want to bring. Take advantage of this platform right now, because when you're back in person, you don't get to bring that piece of paper with you. Right. You know, so anything that's going to help you remember, because you get a little anxious and it is nerve-wracking. Have it behind you, have it here, and just know that what you want to talk with, and you can write it in big letters, you know. So those are some things you can do, but you've just always got to act excited. Really, you have to, you know.
Yeah, exactly. When I was doing my interviews, that a lot of the questions were very kind of basically worded, like they weren't very specific. So I tried my best to you know, create, you know, those quantitative, very action verb-based statements so that they understood why I was applying versus just saying something generic because of the question itself. Yeah, so like in the recent one I had, it just said, you know, why do you want to be in this position? That was the entire question. And I was like,
what you want to say is, I want a job, and I need a job.
I know, I was like, I need money, but...
Right, but you have to lead with, you know, in doing your research on that company, so whatever it is, reflect back to them, again, what was in the job posting. That we had someone who's excited about, I forget where you replied recently, I have a list of them, you know, I'm really excited about being a bank teller for Wells Fargo Bank. I love working with people. I love the idea that I get to share my knowledge of finances with people when they come in, and I might be able to talk with people from all over the world. I love building relationships. I love finance, and this blends them too. Right. So again, it's that really quick, succinct, and yet you're telling them like what you're good at, and that's why you want to work there.
Right, exactly. Like because it was like a financial services kind of position, I talked about the fact that, you know, I've already started proactively sharing knowledge towards for people, you know, globally, and that my goal in life is, you know, to gain as much knowledge as possible, share with other people, and help enhance their lives, especially in regards to finances, because I know how tough it can be, especially like with COVID. And that's what I wanted to represent. So I used, you know, my experiences through my doing this right now with you guys, my, you know, previous positions. Like I was a bank teller at KeyBank actually, and I talked about how, you know, amazing it felt to give a product or service to someone and then see later on months ahead how that benefited them so much. So yeah, exactly how Marcel said.
And just, you know, always remind them that you're excited to be there.
Yeah.
Thank them for the interview. Yeah. Thanks for this opportunity. I'm really excited about applying or with that employer, list the employer again, and just visit, like literally say, I'm excited about this. I like this. I have passion for this. Yeah. We have a producer over here who's giving us some sign language. I'm not sure what that sign language is, but Esma's handling that.
Yeah. So kind of to step back, obviously applying for part-time and full-time jobs is something that a lot of people will do right after graduating. But while you are in school, you do have the option of getting an internship, whether it be during the school year or over the summer, which is what I preferred. How, like, Marcella was the one who actually started my interest in internships, because I wasn't interested at all, because I had been working part-time so often. I was like, what, why is an internship so important?
Yeah, and this is hard for a lot of students, because so many students like you are working part-time already. But again, that's where it comes down to, like, what are your long-term goals? And and when I take a look at your resume, I can say, these are the skills, this is maybe your skills gap. These are the skills you want to build upon. Fortunately, in the major you're in management, you had an opportunity to serve an internship for academic credit. So whatever higher education institution you're in, talk with your academic advisor and your career coach about an opportunity to gain academic credit while you're serving an internship. As it turns out, the Daniels Fund also has an internship that you were at. I can't reiterate enough the importance of working an internship. In addition to or in place of whatever part-time work you're doing. It's often you can do it for, in the summer it's 12 weeks, during the semester it's 16 weeks, the fall and spring semester. Right. But this is where you get to gain critical professional experience with very little risk. So you can decide, like, oh, I really do like working remotely for this company, or I really don't like the office and I don't like this micromanager. So you get to learn about yourself a whole lot, you get to learn about a specific industry, and you get to gain valuable skills on your resume. And I mean, number one, it's resume building, but number two, many interns then get an opportunity or are asked to stay with that company at the end. And that's super important. But the students that I work with, and particularly with the major of management, as well as anybody, it's a broad major. You're learning a lot of leadership skills, but no specific hard skills that will get you a job in accounting, let's say. That's a very specific skill set. So it's so important to have that internship to gain those professional skills. When the students come to me and they've just graduated and they only have experience working in a grocery store or at a restaurant, it's really hard to get them hired because they're just not competitive as applicants. Particularly, again, I hate saying this, you guys who are in college right now, but this is a competitive labor market. There are many people that are hiring. We have a great economy here in Utah. We're very lucky with that. But that still means that there are people who've been laid off who have far more experience than our recent college grads. And so you have to be competitive. And if you don't have an internship, it's very difficult to get a job you want. Now, there are plenty of other places hiring. There's always a call center hiring. They have great benefits. Think about mobility, but an internship provides those crucial resume building skills.
Right, exactly. I got to do 2 really great internships, and I decided to do it over the summer just because it was easier with only taking 2 classes rather than a full semester. And the employees were also more flexible, I felt like, because they obviously wanted to go on vacation and they understood it was more of a relaxed time. So that's my suggestion or tip for those who are looking into internships. So my first one was with Roots of Peace, where actually my mom was the one who got me connected with one of the directors there, with Holly Sweeten, and she was stationed in Utah, but obviously Roots of Peace is in California, and I would have never heard about it had I never gotten that connection. So networking is really important as well when trying to get an internship. And through that internship, I was able to kind of be independent. They gave me tasks, and then from there, I would have to, for example, I had to contact caterers and vendors and figure out, when they would be able to arrive, when they could set up, for instance. And then I also had to figure out, I had to get ethnographies and talk to refugees and immigrants and get their stories, create it in a presentable format to be posted around the art gallery we have here in Utah, and then the Leonard Museum. And then I also had to help with the general, just making sure everything was successful when we had our gala event, and then using social media to post that. And so I was able to have my own interdependent kind of leadership skills. I gained the ability to communicate with people outside of just my general range of employer interaction. And then I, got to utilize the fact that, I know a lot about social media and bring attention to what I was doing, not only within like that specific sphere of people like attending the UN event, the United Nations event here in Utah, but also, beyond, with my school, with my previous friends, with family members, and then as well as nationally.
You got to network. Yeah. That's what you're saying. I mean, and networking is key. And now you have this contact which is peace. And you probably can reach out to people from the UN also. I mean, what an incredible opportunity. But also what you gain from that is you learned about an industry or a niche somewhere that you might not always have had that opportunity. And exactly. I think that influenced kind of what some of your long-term goals are.
Yeah, because it was a nonprofit, and because they were working to help countries who needed to develop, be sustainable and develop their agriculture. I realized that was something I wanted to do as well. Maybe not specifically in that industry, but at least, as a nonprofit with either in education or helping the economy and countries that are struggling are starting to grow. And then after that was this past summer, I was talking to Marcella about what I should kind of do to gain the attention of employers after I had graduated. She said, maybe do another internship, and she helped me, apply for it, updated my resume, and then she was able to vouch for me because she had that, those contacts and resources. And I was able to work at Hearsay Systems, where I was able to gain, more technical skills, I would say. I learned how to use Salesforce. I learned how to use Backstage. I was able to work with a small team, so I got to know my employer very well, my manager, as well as my coworkers. And then they decided to keep me on after that. So I stayed another semester because they were, they really appreciated my hard work. And then I got to work on, ethics-based concepts as well because of the type of internship I had at the university. So I was able to go beyond just my small group team members. I got to, meet with HR and get those contacts. I got to meet with like the Manila team we had and talk to their supervisor, get to learn about his thoughts and how we can all stay united with our ethics within the corporation. And then after that, because of my like due diligence, they allowed me to work on like side projects as well, where I got to work with data collection, and now I'm working with very specific corporations that are very hands-on and need someone who's very good at following detail. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
You got a name brand multinational corporation on your resume, and again, and you network, and so. Again, always that's key, is like you took the initiative to meet the person in the Manila team. And I think that if you're based in the Bay Area, I believe. Yeah. And so you honed your work from home skills, you adapted to COVID-19 protocol. You were resilient. And so, key skills that employers are really looking for are adaptability and resiliency. Many employers in an interview will ask you, what did you do during COVID? How did you adapt? And so have an answer for that as well. And one more thing that you need to be really prepared for, and this should have been standard, frankly, years ago, but employers are asking very specifically, please give me an example of when you worked with someone who was different than you, and how did you handle that? So be prepared. There's a whole list of diversity, equity, and inclusion questions that I've been preparing students for as well. And many big employers are beginning to ask those very specific questions that provide, gender and racial equality focus questions, and how you handle that, and how you work with that, and how adaptable you are.
Yeah, exactly. I actually did get a question exactly like that on my last interview, and I was prepared for it because I always make sure to get to know everyone on my team, so that's really important. We kind of did talk about this a little bit earlier, but obviously going to career services, you can set up an appointment with them to practice interviewing ahead of time, where you bring your resume, you dress properly for an interview, and they give you, I think when I did mine, like 10th, 10th grade, I'm not in high school anymore, my junior year or my sophomore year, he asked me, what position, he asked me, give me the position, give me the company, and then tell me why you're applying, and then based on that, he created questions, and then he would ask me those questions, and I realized right away that I was not prepared. He would ask me, what value are you providing to this company? What previous experiences do you have? How are you a team player? And I just didn't understand. I just didn't realize that I had that experience available to me. I just never had like taken the time to talk about it with someone like Marcella, write it down, and really focus and hone on with my skill sets and with my strengths. And once I did that, it was more successful.
Yeah, it takes practice. And again, like even if you're not a college student watching this, but you're looking to change careers, if you haven't interviewed in a year or two, practice with somebody, practice with your friends, someone who will give you honest feedback that's not judgmental. But that practice is so important. The toughest question that most students have to answer, and all of us, tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
And there is a pattern, and I'm not going to go into it here because you can Google answers for this, but there is a pattern in the specificity to answering that question that again always comes back to why you're there and what's the value you bring to that employer. It is the hardest question. So sometimes when students meet with me for their very first mock interview, we'll spend the whole time practicing that question. And students are shocked, like, oh, I have to really think about this. Never say your age in your interview, please. Employers hate that because that can create a whole discrimination lawsuit. It's not, tell me about yourself is not a rehash of your resume. It is something completely different. But that's really important to practice. And then for everything else beyond that, most employers will ask you these what are called behavioral-based interview questions, similar to what you mentioned. And so always make sure you've done your due diligence on the corporation, know everything about them, look at their website, and then be prepared to answer these behavioral-based interview questions. Most employers want to know, how do you handle stress? How do you handle change? How do you adapt? How have you worked with diversity? But they're looking for specific qualities and transferable skills, especially for roles that don't require a very specific hard skill, like, technology.
Right. Beyond that, we're gonna kind of talk about like a technique that you kind of always recommend to students that you're working with.
Yeah.
It's called the STAR interview technique. And like, kind of why is this such a technique? Why does this technique work for people?
It works because it provides a framework for answering questions. And because you can have examples stored in the back of your head, and if you're frankly, if you're a college graduate, you're going to be applying and interviewing quite a bit. And every interview, even if your interview goes bad, every interview is an experience that was a learning experience. And so this technique provides a framework. And again, if you're doing something remote, you get to write down your examples on a piece of paper and have it off screen. And so STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result, or the shorter version of that is PAR. Problem, action, result.
Yeah.
And so an interviewer might ask you, tell me about a time that you had to adapt to change really quickly. How did you handle that? So you'll have an example that you prepared for in the back of your mind, and you frame it. This was the problem, and you don't have to use these words, but you're telling a story. A good interview is when you're always storytelling. So think about what you like about a story. It's the beginning, the conundrum, the problem, and then the result, And so there's a story arc to that. And what was the situation, the background, what were you trying to accomplish? What did you do? And what was the result of your efforts? And so just practice that. And I've had alumni come to me and say, I had no idea, and this has made all the difference. And so you just always have that framework. And if you're prepared, you have to be prepared. You'll do fine.
Yeah, exactly. I noticed that too when I was interviewing. I remember exactly when I was interviewing for like KeyBank, and they asked me, in my previous role when I was working at the downtown library here in Salt Lake, what did I do specifically that resulted in like a goal being accomplished? And I just really learned about the STAR technique, and I had used that, and I was really impressed because I don't think he had been expecting such a very kind of descriptive and very specific experience. I don't know if his other interviews hadn't gone well, if they hadn't been very specific, but he was really impressed with that. And then it kind of broke the ice because he was like, wow, the main library, I go there with my kids all the time. And then we got to personalize more, and it made the rest of the conversation and the rest of the interview so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I know a lot of people are on social media, all around the world. That's how we're connecting now, using Facebook. But in all honesty, I really did not focus on LinkedIn until recently because I didn't understand the point of a social media that targeted, business professionals. And now I 100% understand that I was wrong. If you want to go and be recognized and be out there connecting and networking, LinkedIn is one of the greatest ways to meet people, to see opportunities, to kind of see what other people are doing within their career or their educational approaches, and to help yourself, enhance your skills, potentially get jobs, etc.
Yeah, I would never say you were wrong, Esma. I would just say you weren't there yet. You didn't need to be there yet. And and so usually there'll be one or two classes while you're in college where they'll say the LinkedIn profile. And students will create it and then not touch it again until your senior year you're on the job market. And so LinkedIn it's funny because LinkedIn is the only social media I'm on. I've never been on Facebook or Instagram, if you can believe it. It's because I'm old. But LinkedIn is like Facebook for work. And so you don't post things that are personal. You post things where, again, you're going to get sick of me saying this, things that showcase the value and the strengths that you provide. And so, like, you've done a great job of posting links to this broadcast after you broadcast it. Now, if I'm an employer, and recruiters are on LinkedIn. And so if you're a recruiter and you're looking for someone who is driven and motivated and has a degree from a business school, you can do a couple of searches, let's say, looking for students that are graduating this semester from the Echo School, and you're going to come upon Esma's profile. And I'm thinking, here's someone who's actually teaching and taken upon herself to create a bilingual finance academy, who's graduating and wants to work in finance. I want someone that motivated. And you're only going to find that on LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn is a huge platform, and it takes, I, as a career coach, even, I'm still learning different things with it, but it's a great way to reach out with alumni, to network, to ask for informational interviews, especially right now when everyone's working from home. People have time to talk on the phone for 20 minutes. No one has to go anywhere. You're not driving to lunch together. So take advantage of this. Ask your career coach at your institution how to do an alumni search for people who graduated within 5 years in an industry that you're looking at. And then you have to connect with them. Whenever you connect, I'll give you this one tip for LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is huge, and we've got some resources at the end. But whenever you ask someone to connect on LinkedIn, tell them why you want to connect. I won't, unless it's a student, I will not accept a connection request unless that person has told me, why do you want to connect with me? It's not just about having 500 people or more. It's, I want to have quality relationships, and then you can even, you can search my connections. There's so much to it. It's a big platform. The more you learn and the more work you have, you'll learn how to use it better. But every employer, if they're interested in interviewing you, after I've looked at your resume, they will go to LinkedIn. So make sure you have it updated, or at least a complete profile, even if it's not as huge, but make sure you have presence on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wish, even if I hadn't really stepped up my LinkedIn game until senior year, I wish I had kept adding contacts that I had met throughout the years to keep those connections, because now I kind of had to scramble and find everyone I knew from my classes, from my work, from volunteer experiences. And then once I connected with them, they would message me. They'd say, how is everything going? I saw you had, you're open for work. And I wish I had spent the time from my freshman year, keeping those connections alive. So now it doesn't feel as awkward trying to reach out to them to see what they're doing, getting those informational interviews, and potentially asking them about the current job market, etc. So that's another tip I would suggest. Keep your connections active. Even if you're not talking to them every day, see what they're up to. Like or comment on their posts. Let them know that you're still there and that you appreciate them.
Liking, commenting, tagging. I imagine it's not unlike other social media, but then when an employer goes to your profile, they can look at your activity.
Right.
And so the more active you are, the more there's an algorithm, of course, like there is to all social media. But if you've had no activity, and even if you like something, it gets reposted, as I can see, Esma, like this, that shows that you're actively engaged and you're open to learning something new. And employers always want someone who can learn something new. So as a career coach, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. If you're in an active job and you're not actively seeking, you don't need to be on all the time, but update it occasionally when the opportunity comes along, because recruiters do use it to find people, and it's a great way to connect with recruiters as well.
So I know we kind of talked about this a little bit, but we can kind of go through it a little bit quickly. Like, I hadn't realized this, but in regards to, when a lot of people pick their university on I think 3 or 4 factors. Does that university have the program you want to go into? Is it within your cost range, the location, and then, the job opportunities after, based on the ranking of that college or university. So, it was something I hadn't really focused on because I knew that the University of Utah was such a great school. But now that I think about it, I'm lucky because it is such a great school, because so many people know it, that I have these opportunities.
Yeah, and Utah is actually known, I think we're the #1 value in the nation. We're in the top 10 of the most valuable public institutions in the nation, which doesn't mean that we're the cheapest. It means that we actually create the most value for the dollar. And we're part of the WUI and WICHE scholarship system. So anyone who's viewing tonight who's on the West Coast, if you're in your senior year, your junior year, look into your scholarship options, because it can be cheaper for you to come to school at the University of Utah than it can be to go to school at UC system. But I digress. So, all this talk about career coaches, you're probably thinking, well, really, beyond this, why would a university offer this? We're not just being nice. There's always an end game, and that is that ultimately I want you personally, I want you to have a job. And all of us do, because we want to make sure that the education that you've had for 4 or more years has created value for you and has given you something that you're going to build upon, and you're going to go out there and you're going to work for someone and create your own economy and be a part of the global economy. And eventually you're also going to hopefully come back and donate to the University of Utah School of Business. But more than anything, job placement, when you land a job, directly affects the rankings of a university. So the more students that we have placed, which means, landed jobs within the first 6 months of graduating, the higher our national university rankings are. Now, how this benefits you, the higher our school or any school is ranked, the more you can negotiate for a higher salary, because you're coming from a stellar institution. So think about, using Harvard or Stanford or even UC Berkeley as examples. We know they're ranked very, very high. We know they're exclusive to get into, and I'm not comparing them to the university, but those people, when you graduate from Harvard, you're pretty much going to have a job, and you're going to have a really high salary. And they're ranked a certain level. So we're ranked, within the public institution system. An undergraduate placement is ranked, graduate placement is ranked, and all of those, again, affect tuition and it affects salary. The higher, if you're graduating from a top 10 business school, you definitely get to negotiate for a higher salary. You need to accept that. So higher ed, so career coaching, career placement affects the rankings of a university, which are very, very important to every university, particularly important to business schools.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to have a disclaimer. I'm speaking personally, I'm not speaking tonight as a representative of the ECHL School. My opinions are mine alone. I'm not reflective of the ECHL School of Business.
Exactly, yeah. Marcella, this has been really great, and took the time to go over a lot of this with me, because obviously I'm still learning, and what I did learn from her I wanted to share with you. But she's more succinct, and she really gets to the point on what's important. So I really appreciate it, and thanks so much for
thanks for asking me to be here.
So again, we kind of talked about the fact that, why is it important to get a 4-year graduate degree or undergraduate degree? And that's because, as we can see with the economy, more technical skills are required, more advanced, educational skills are required as well. And it goes beyond just, I guess the basic thing is education allows you to have kind of a holistic background around yourself. It's not just about just going to a school, getting A's. It's about what you learn, the skills you gained, the people you connected with.
Learning how to learn.
Yeah,
really,
exactly.
It's about learning how to learn and learning what you don't know and having an opportunity to learn more and having that growth mindset. But I think kind of what we're talking about here with the lifetime learning potential is that, most universities, or what you'll hear when you're in high school is, oh, you need to graduate in 4 years. And that's kind of this expectation. Okay, if I take 15, at the University of Utah, if I take 15 credit hours per semester, the math evens out, I'm going to graduate in 4 years. And that's not, it's right for many students, it's not right for every student. We have a very unique population at the University of Utah. We have many, many students who work full-time and go to school part-time, and they graduate in 6, 7, or 8 years. It's actually something that's also unique to the University of Utah. Right. The problem with that is that you are that 5th, 6th, especially 7th and 8th year are cutting into what's called your lifetime earning potential. Okay. So sometimes students will say, I want to work full-time so I don't have any debt when I graduate, and right. That is right for some people. It is not right for every person. But what they're not thinking of, if you're taking 3, let's say your entry-level job is going to be $50,000 after 4 years, and if you're planning on being in school for another 3 years, well, that's potentially $150,000 you're not making of your lifetime, and you add in with that raises and promotions and your 401k plan and your benefits. I mean, there's so much. So ideally, you do want to graduate in 4, and I'm going to say 5 years because I have a son who started his freshman year this year, and I know it's going to take him 5 years. And so 4 years because you're going to start earning money faster. I mean, and that's not everything, but just something to consider, obviously.
And it also depends on your program, right? I know a lot of the engineering programs here, they usually take about 5 years, but that's because it has so much more extra to it. While I know people who are in like psychology or psychiatry, it only takes maybe 2.5 years. But the important thing is recognizing the amount of time you have to get a degree done and how much of a lost opportunity you might have if it takes you longer, getting a good job, getting a higher salary, getting benefits, starting your retirement plans. So those are all important things to factor in when planning your, either 4-year, 2-year, 5-year college degree.
And I think a lot of that's even more so important if you're a non-traditional student. If you're a traditional student, you have a lot of leeway and flexibility there. How are we doing on time, Esma?
I think we are okay. I think we'll be done maybe in another 15, 20 minutes. Okay. We should be good. Yeah. Okay. Thanks to all my viewers for, being here with us. I really appreciate the time you took. And hopefully this has been very helpful. I know that Marcella always has great advice as well as resources, and she wanted to share some of her book and website recommendations with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you also put my LinkedIn profile on here. Is that right?
Yes. Okay. I think I'll show it in just a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I just can't see it well enough. So yeah, there's so much information out there about resumes and LinkedIn and everything else. There's a couple of sites that I call my go-to sites that I refer students to. This site has a funny name. It's called Let's Eat Grandma, but actually it's the home of the Career Warriors podcast and great career advice. So I love this website, and if you click on this link, or if you keep a copy of this link, you'll go right to the Career Warriors podcast. What I like about the podcast is it has 10 to 15 minute episodes of really great, recent, up-to-date information about job searching. And I refer students there for LinkedIn profile tips, ideas for recent graduates, anything that's new and relevant. I really like that podcast. So and the website. It's a funny name. It's a play on words. Let's see, Grandma, but the actual is it's Career Warriors. The one you have below, and I'm sorry, it's my old eyes. What's it? Oh, this is a great link, Job Skills to Succeed in a Post-Coronavirus World. And this actually came out in April, so it's interesting to compare it with today. But, people are hiring here in Utah. We're lucky we have a unique economy here and a good economy. But tech skills, sales skills are really, really important. So that's a great link to go to. As what are the skills that are going to come out on top in inshallah, in a very recent post-coronavirus world. So that's great. Forbes is a great a great reference point and a great website for that. I like this graphic. It's how to create a LinkedIn profile in 8 simple steps. It's an excellent graphic about your LinkedIn profile and how to have it complete. There's a lot of information out there. LinkedIn itself is an excellent resource, not just for networking, but for learning. There's something called LinkedIn Learning, and you can do free courses.
Didn't know that.
So I have a lot of students that, management students who actually want to go into project management, but we don't really have project management as part of that management curriculum. But you can go to LinkedIn Learning and take free courses on what is project management. And so you can put that on your resume. You can get a digital certificate and it shows up on your LinkedIn profile. So LinkedIn Learning is a great resource in addition to this new site they've created called opportunity.linkedin.com. And that will tell you what, again, are the most in-demand job skills. And they're taking that from aggregate information from LinkedIn job postings. And so LinkedIn is always going to have the most up-to-date LinkedIn job skills. So if you click on that link, you're going to learn how do you become better at sales? How do you become better at whatever it is? Take advantage of those free resources. If you don't have the skill that's in a job posting, depending on what it is, I mean, you don't have to have every single job skill and equality in a job posting, but if you're pretty close to it, go ahead and apply. But if you don't have something and you really want to learn something else, go take advantage of these free resources, particularly through LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely agree with that. And I know you also had some books you wanted to share.
Thank you. So, okay, thank you for reminding me of that. So regardless of your major, if you're a college student or you're the parent of a college student and you wanted your child to be a doctor or a lawyer, but instead they ended up with a degree in international studies, it's okay. It doesn't matter because there's a great book I recommend called You Majored in What? And this is great for recent college grads. It walks through all sorts of things about how to create a wandering map of your skills and the skills you've had throughout your life. It is designing your path from college to career. I highly recommend this book. It's written simply and it's fun to read. So I really recommend it again. It's You Majored in What by Catherine Brown, who comes from the field of education. So I love this. Another one, especially, this is really for women who are learning how to negotiate. One thing you need to think about is whenever you get your job offer, you always want to negotiate your job offer. Never accept the first salary they've offered you. And there's a whole science to that, and there's some ways of doing it. But women are not as good about negotiating, simply put, as men are. It's shocking, isn't it? So, and it starts with knowing what you want and knowing how to ask. I love this book. It actually changed my life. It's called Ask For It. How women can use the power of negotiation to get what they really want. Again, great examples. It gives you a worksheet on what you want. And that doesn't just mean salary. It means, do you want paid childcare? Do you want more time off? Do you want a 40-hour? Do you want to work from home? Now we're all working from home. Doesn't matter what it is. Do you want more vacation time? Do you want to, how do you talk with your partner at home about sharing the childcare duties, perhaps, or the house cleaning duties? It really talks about knowing what you want and how to ask for it, and gives you very specific framework for doing that, a 4-page process. So again, Ask For It, and that is by Linda Babcock and Sarah Lashever, and these are all, of course, Amazon or anywhere else, your library. And then I know, again, we're talking to an audience who's around the world, and many of you will find yourselves on teams, on working teams with people from all around the world. We all know different cultures do things differently. Whether you're coming from the United States and Northern Europe, we have very individualist societies, and in other countries we do not. It's more collectivism. And so if you're on a team with someone perhaps from Afghanistan and from the United States and from Germany, you're all going to have a different way of approaching the problem.
Exactly.
You're going to have a different way of making a decision or even building a relationship, And so it's really important to know those things, especially for business students. And so I love this book. It's called The Culture Map, Breaking Through the Invisible Boundaries of Global Business. It's written almost like a novel, although it's not a novel. You can find her on LinkedIn, Erin Meyer, or excuse me, not on LinkedIn. You can find her. She has done a TED Talk, and it talks about the 8 most common cultural dimensions in the world of business. And I'll just tell you really briefly. I'm sorry, what they are, but it's about again, persuading, decision making, building relationships, conflict, feedback with your employer. And so again, if you ever think you're going to find yourself on an international team, wherever you are in the world, knowing how, and the great thing about this book is not just about what are the cultural dimensions of these specific countries, but how are they in relationship to other countries. So, and I know, thinking again about individualism versus collectivism, if you know what that is, boy, looking at our country now, you might know what that is. But, you know, how is the U.S. with individualism related to Germany, related to Norway, related to Spain? And you'll just learn so much about history and the world and language and how to work on an international team. So I love this book as well. The Culture Map by Anna Meyer. So those are some of my favorite books that I go to.
Yeah, really great recommendations. I'm excited to add those to my reading list. Now that everyone's at home, you know, time to read some books. Get some new skills. So I always like to end my show with kind of like a message of hope. I know, especially right now, due to COVID, the economy, you know, the climate and other factors, whether personal, public, national, international, there's a lot going on that a person has to kind of deal with. You know, what kind of is your hope of message for, you know, students, their parents, young professionals, or even professionals who are trying to get a new job, or those who are, you know, kind of heading back into the education field after many years, or, you know, kind of what would you like to share to people?
Well, first I want to thank you for asking me to be here, or for having me here.
Thank you.
I want to thank our producer off screen. It's been really fun here.
Yes, my mom. That's okay.
Yeah. My message of hope is it's never ever too late to get an education, number one. It doesn't matter if you're 40 years old. I did not get my college education until I was in my 40s, to be perfectly honest. It's been life-changing for me. And so, number one, never think you're too old or it's too late to do anything. But I mean, as simple as it sounds, just please be kind and don't judge, and treat each other with respect and get to know people. That's what I love about my work. I said this, building relationships. I love meeting people all over the world. I love meeting your mother, our producer today. I've loved getting to know you, and just the more we can get to know people, the more we can just break, I don't know, it's try as it sounds, break down barriers, but be willing to build relationships with people who might appear or seem different from you, and ask questions and be curious. You know, don't judge, be curious, you know, and just be kind and tell people, you know, cultivate. It's so hard when we're all inside our houses right now, or we're not going out and doing a whole lot. And so make sure that, you know, have patience and foster those relationships that you do have with your friends, you know, that are in your Corona bubble, but keep those relationships going and remind people how much you love them, how much they value you, know, and I hope that we all get to travel again safely soon, and hopefully in 2021, and we get to know each other again around the world in these different ways, you know. So that might sound really cliche, like a Hallmark card, but that's my message of hope, you know.
As long as hope sounds like a Hallmark card, then we know everything's going to be okay. So yeah, I really appreciate, you know, Marcella. Again, she is a career coach that has been helping me, you know, this past year. Without her, I wouldn't have been able to have such a perfected resume that I do have currently. I wouldn't have, you know, the internship that I had this past summer. And now with her support, I'm figuring out what I want to do in the future, getting help to, you know, seek employers for full-time positions. You know, so really reach out to the resources you have on campus. You know, we do pay a lot for tuition, or we get scholarships like the Daniels Fund. But at the same time, you know, at the end of those 4 years, 5 years, 2 years, you want to go out into the world knowing that you have gained skills, you know, both technically, soft skills, and transferable skills.
And soft skills are hard skills these days. Yeah. Transferable skills.
Yeah. So, you know, use as many resources you have around you. That's just going to benefit you in the long run anyways. So I really hope today was helpful for everyone. Again, you have my email, you have my Facebook. Please comment down below if you have any questions, comments. If you know anyone you would like to appear on the show, or if there's specific topics that you want shared that I could teach and hopefully get people to be on my show. Again, my email is universalfinanceacademy@gmail.com. My name is Esma Pupel. Again, last minute, thank you so much again, Marcella, for taking the time this evening. Khudafis, Shaba Khair. I'll see you next week. Yeah.